last year, 2 days before Thanksgiving, I had bought everything I needed to make sweet potato samosas for my Friendsgiving, as well as my share of booze. My mom called me at work at 2 p.m. I stepped into a quiet hallway and picked up, thinking nothing of it. Mom occasionally calls me to chat. She was oddly calm. Dad is gone. You have to come home right now. She didn't tell me any other details. She had to go call other people and hung up. I took a few breaths, went to my desk for my purse, and walked to my boss's office. My dad died. I have to go. I don't know when I'll be back. Walking to my car, the first thing that my ridiculous over-planning brain thought of was that I had dinner plans that night with a close friend. Before I had a flight or had packed, I called her to cancel. And then I asked her, what the fuck do I pack? She stayed on the phone with me while I pulled random clothing from my closet and assured me that she would look after my diabetic cat for as long as I needed to be gone. Once I was driving to the airport, I finally cried. I checked in, red-eyed, then curled up on the floor by the gate, staying busy, emailing and texting people the news. Dad was 69, retired and healthy. When I got home, I learned that the day before, Dad had gone on a 3-mile evening walk with a neighbor after working in the garden most of the day. He talked to my nephew around 7 about helping out at the high school drama club the next week, building sets. My mom was out of town for the evening. She called around 9 to say goodnight, but he didn't pick up. She said later that she had thought nothing of it and just figured he had been in the shower. And he was. She found him there when she got home the next afternoon. Her goodnight message was on the machine, unheard, and the shower was still on upstairs. She went up to find his 6'8" frame curled up, cold on the shower floor, killed by a sudden and unexpected heart attack. Wednesday was basically a blur. All I really remember is our trip to the mortuary to go through paperwork. Dad would be cremated. The funeral director squirmed a bit when my sister pointed out an extra $175 charge. It was for an extra large cremation box due to his height. My brother, 6'7", cracked a smile. I caught his eye and burst out laughing. Then my sister, then even my mom giggled through her tears. Well, she said, Dad's been paying extra for extra tall clothes and size 15 shoes for decades. Why should this be any different? The funeral director looked at us nervously, shuffled some papers around, and moved along. A few days later, my brother picked up Dad's ashes. We quietly put them in a cupboard in the garage, the one that had all of Dad's supplies for home brewing. We figured that's where he would want to be for the time being, and they stayed there. We managed a day-late Thanksgiving at my sister's, with some extended family and some almost family. It was terrible. We faked our way through dry turkey, drinking a lot of extra wine and devouring my uncle's excellent apple pie. Someone suggested that we start choosing pictures for a memorial slideshow. Figured we might find it cathartic. And we did. Great memories of trips and parties, bad hair, worse mustaches, and of course, nudity. That's really big. In the 70s, my parents and their friends would go rafting on the Green River in Colorado. No one else was ever on the river, so they wouldn't bother to wear clothes. We carefully set the full frontal pics aside. The town that I grew up in is tiny. Dad taught geometry and coached basketball there for 35 years, so everyone knew him. That weekend, still a holiday, my brother, sister, and I sat around the dining room table with 2 laptops and a phone. We went about trying to figure out where to hold a memorial. No church or hotel barroom in town was big enough for the crowd that we were expecting, not even close. Nothing was available anyway on short notice, especially during the holidays. There was a giant bingo hall as part of a carnival each June. One of the board members of the carnival was my elementary school friend's dad. We interrupted his Thanksgiving weekend. No luck, all booked. There was a public auditorium which would work. We called the mayor at home on the holiday weekend. There was a holiday craft fair, Saturday and Sunday, for the next 3 weekends, because people need that many holiday crafts. The high school gym was suggested as an option. It was so big, such terrible acoustics, such terrible light. But the gym had been his second home. He had coached there for decades. Even after he retired, he would still show up. He called himself the coach emeritus. He lost his wedding ring there in the late 80s. I like to think that it was still there, in some corner under the bleachers, or in the back of the closet where the volleyball nets were stored. As the other options disappeared, the idea started to grow on me. So the gym it was. 2 weeks later, driving to the high school for the service, it was raining, then pouring in sheets, then massive hail, lightning, and wind that shook the car. When I walked into the gym, just 45 minutes before the memorial, it was dark. The storm had taken out the power, of course. 2 people were already heading home to pick up generators and extension cords. Tables and chairs were brought in from the cafeteria. Tablecloths appeared out of nowhere. And by some stroke of luck, the night before had been the parade of lights. People decorate their cars, bikes, dogs, and horses with battery-operated Christmas lights and then send them down Main Street at dusk. Someone had a pile of lights in their car from the previous night's festivities, and they were laid out on the food tables. A neighbor ordered food for a few hundred from an Italian restaurant in town. But when the owners found out who it was for, they wouldn't take any money. Dad had helped their son after school with geometry 2 decades before, helped him graduate. And a family friend made 700 mini cupcakes for the masses. Someone went to Walmart and bought back a few hundred tea lights to spread out around the space. AV equipment from the drama room was plugged into the generators for the hundreds of pictures that looped through while people mingled. It was actually quite beautiful. Many people figured we had set it up that way on purpose. Over 500 people braved the storm, the hail, and the waterlogged roads to be there that day, from Seattle to San Diego and everywhere in between. Friends and families, students dating back to the mid-70s through his retirement in 2008. Many of them I didn't know. Many others told me that they were there, but I never saw them. We opened the floor to anyone who wanted to share. People spoke, told stories I'd never heard. His 5'6" basketball coaching partner told stories making fun of their height difference. A former basketball player told about their basketball seasons of all losses in the early 80s and said that it had been one of the best experiences of his life. A student who, after years of assuming that he just didn't get math, figured it out in Dad's little portable classroom and went on to be a teacher. My brother talked about basketball. My sister talked about parenting. I talked about math. It was our shared love. He and I talked about calculus, logic, and physics when I was in college. And when I went back to grad school, we moved on to computational theory, formal languages, and Turing machines. But more than anything else, he taught me to be curious. And then everyone was gone, and suddenly the house was empty and so quiet. Christmas was just a couple weeks away, and we needed an escape. We went to my grandmother's to take care of her, recovering from pneumonia, but really to not be at the house, to be busy, and to pretend that it wasn't Christmas. We've gotten through the last year, one holiday at a time. The first Father's Day since Dad's death was the hardest for me. I cried in the weeks before at the terrible, cheesy Father's Day commercials and spent the weekend moving, knowing that he would have been there to help. Friends took Mom snowshoeing and out to a movie on her wedding anniversary. She came to San Diego to visit me on Dad's birthday. Each monthly anniversary gets just a little bit easier. I no longer forget that he's gone, and it gets just a little easier to remember the wonderful things and miss him just a little bit less. This Thanksgiving Day was exactly 1 year since his death. We again escaped normal and rented a cottage near the beach in Ventura. We arrived with plans: movies, walks, and bike rides on the coast, seeing my uncle, some cousins, kids, and my grandmother. I recently got a tattoo as a memorial for him. The Pythagorean theorem is now permanently on my forearm. It was his favorite. The dad jokes that I heard as a kid were about geometry. What do you call an adorable little angle? A cute angle. Why did the obtuse angle go to the beach? Because it was over 90 degrees. Mom and my brother would roll their eyes, and I would giggle if I caught the sparkle in Dad's smile. Pythagoras explains a concept that should be difficult and complicated and makes it simple and elegant. That's how he thought of math. It's a beautiful language that explains everything around us. It brings reason and order to the chaos, and it's universal. A formula that explains a triangle is the same here as anywhere. Just a few days ago, on Monday, we chilled the last 2 bottles of Dad's homebrew and took his ashes out of the brewing cupboard. We took them out to the massive oak tree on our property, had a toast, and left his ashes there among the hundreds of daffodils that will bloom in just a couple of months. Thanks.
That's Jessica Friis. It's her first time on the VAMP stage.